Mom was born Lillian Ruth Lewis on December 28, 1921 in Indianapolis, Indiana. She was the seventh child born to Grandma Emma and Grandpa Stephen. Although most of her brothers and sisters were born in Jackson, Mississippi, Uncle Harry and Mom were the only two born in Indianapolis after the family moved to escape the unfavorable conditions of the South. Mom had a logical head on her shoulders from an early age, which is why she was able to decide at age 6 or 7 that she wanted to teach math. How progressive is that? But that was Mom. She thought big, she dreamed big, and whatever she put her mind to doing, she accomplished. At the age of 16, Mom was offered a scholarship to West Virginia State University to study math and physics. While there, she met the first of many lifetime friends, Mildred Dupree, later to become Mildred Leonard. Like Mom, Aunt Mildred was also a forward thinker. Her career led her to be one of the first Black female captains in World War II. She got her degree at West Virginia State University and her master's at the University of Michigan. Aunt Mildred became a police officer in Detroit, which at that time was very rare for women. Mom and Aunt Mildred would eventually work together many years later at Northwestern High School, where Mom would teach math and Aunt Mildred would be a counselor. Once in Detroit, Mom became a member of Zion Chapel Church of Christ Holiness, where her father, Grandpa Stephen, was a deacon. She taught Sunday school, but it always had that special Ruth infusion of information that would encourage her class to think about concepts and possibilities that were not commonly taught in church at that time. Mom's arrival in Detroit not only led her to meet and marry Daddy, it also led to the beginning of more lifelong friendships. As she went on, she met Aunt Marion Coleman, who became Aunt Marion McDonald, and Aunt Marjorie Bryant, and they were all in each other's weddings. They remained close friends, raised their families together, and celebrated many birthdays with each other. This is what Aunt Marjorie wrote about Mom. I met Ruth in the late 40s. I was assigned to be a teacher at the Bronson School. There, I met Marion Coleman. She was the first reading readiness teacher with the Detroit school system. Marion introduced me to Ruth. They lived across the street from each other. Ruth was teaching at Miller School at the time. The schools were close to each other. I became friends with both of them. We started doing things together. One of the main things I remember is our trip together to New York on the train. We stayed at a hotel in Harlem, which was a special hotel at that time. We saw everything important in New York. One of the special things I remember is our visit to the Apollo Theater. I don't remember who was performing at the Apollo, but it was a special theater and there was someone special performing there. We did many things together, shopping, went to the museums, etc. This is all before we married. We later married. Ruth married Laban, Marion married Parker, and I married Melvin. We were all in each other's weddings. Laban, Parker, and Melvin became friends, and the families did many things together, like picnics and visits and so forth. Another important thing that Ruth introduced me to was the history of colored people. We participated in many meetings. That is when I began to learn a great deal. Ruth was a very interesting person. Ruth, Marion, and I were very special friends. Marion is in my memory, and Ruth will be too as long as I live. I miss them both, but I will have special memories always, as many of you do.
Assignment was at Miller High School. She loved Miller High School. She taught the best of the best, as she would say over the years. She would also say that her Miller High School students were those who could be examples for the young people of today because they were very humble. They came from humble beginnings and they never forgot that. So therefore that helped them to develop into the people that they became.
The year is 1979. We were planning to celebrate our 25th silver anniversary reunion at the Rooster Tail on the edge of the Detroit River. We were so excited, and we needed a guest speaker to mirror our excitement. We all agreed that that person should be Mrs. Ruth Lewis Brown. My task was to contact her immediately, and I did. She stated that she would be honored because we were, quote, her children, unquote.
Dr. Brown did something for me I don't think anyone else could have done. Played a lot of ball, but she gave me that true motherly feeling. Because I didn't have a mother. My mother died when I was 5 years old. I was taking a general course. She said, I know you can play ball, but you're going to have to do something after you get to playing ball. You're going to take a college preparatory course, prepare yourself for life.
As a teacher, she made me feel very important. She was not a derogatory person, even with those that didn't really measure up because of attitudes and behavior. But she always made you feel important, and it really helped the students to change their attitudes. And whenever we saw her, everybody just huddled around her. She was so very, very special.
Mom left Miller in 1957, just as it was in the process of reverting back to a junior high school. Her next stop would be Northwestern High School. While teaching there, she earned her master's degree and her ed specialist degree from Wayne State University. At Northwestern, Mom would work with Aunt Mildred Leonard and would meet Aunt Lois Macon. Aunt Lois was another logical-minded math teacher, and it showed in how she conducted her business. Ironically, Aunt Mildred, Aunt Lois, and Mom all passed within 6 months of each other. Mom's personal tradition to have a positive impact on her students and expand her extended family continued at Northwestern High School.
Mrs. Brown was my math teacher at Northwestern High School. And it's interesting how in life there are instructors that you remember and there's some that you forget. But she was one that remained in my life from the time I started at Northwestern until her demise. Mrs. Brown always came to our class reunions that we had at Northwestern. And believe it or not, after I returned from graduate school in Connecticut, we lived in the same neighborhood. I lived on Pioneer. There were a couple of times that we did go to a couple of events together. I remember her because she gave so much of herself. She was so significant in my life. I was a challenge student in terms of math. It was a challenge for me to just try to do the best that I could, and I couldn't see the light, but I am glad that I went to her and I asked her if she could help me because I had to pass algebra. In order to be admitted to an undergraduate university, you have to have algebra. And so I lived not too far from the school, and I would go to visit Ms. Brown during her relief period at Northwestern. And so she really tutored me and worked with me so that I did pass my math courses and I was admitted to Wilkesboro University. After I returned from the University of Hartford and came back to Detroit, I started working on 2 other advanced degrees. And then after I received my doctorate, I told Ms. Brown, I said, I had to have that statistics, math you never get away from. And anyway, I applied at Wayne County Community College. And lo and behold, I was teaching at Wayne County Community College. This is Brown.
While teaching at Northwestern, Mom also became one of the first instructors to teach at Wayne County Community College. Although Mom retired from Northwestern High School in 1979, she continued to work at Wayne County Community College until her retirement in 2004, when she was 83 years old. At the community college, Mom would reconnect with Dolores Leonard, whom she had met years before at Miller. Dolores became another member of our extended family.
I first met Ma Brown in 1956 at Miller High School. Ma Brown was a math teacher, and I was the secretary to William Merritt, principal. Harold Harrison was the assistant principal. Ma Brown would sashay into the office on occasion, and I don't know why she would sashay in, but I got to know that was Lillian Ruth Brown. And she would roll her eyes. She had a thing about rolling her eyes. And so that's how I initially met her. I left Miller in 1957. My next contact with Ma Brown was at Wayne County Community College in 1983. By that time, I had earned my 3 degrees as a doctor, and I was a counselor. So as a counselor at the downtown campus one day, she was sashaying down the hall, and I recognized the sachet. And I said, I know you, but where do I know you from? And then we got to know each other. Well, subsequently, I went to Egypt with she and Mr. Brown and Miss Marie. That was in 1985, as I recall. And that was a very good experience, very good experience. Ma Brown was into Black studies. I was just coming into my own, into knowledge. And so Mr. Brown was very good in terms of giving me information, as was Ma Brown. As a counselor at Wayne County Community College, I was able to steer students into classes that I thought the students would benefit most in a particular curriculum area. So Ma Brown's forte being math, that's her specialty. Therefore, I tried to steer students in her direction. Why did I steer them into her direction? Because she took time to explain the process to the students. She did not hurry along, even though she had to cover a certain amount of content, math content. She still took time to explain and to make sure that the student understood.
Aside from teaching, another one of Mom's passions was to travel. She often talked about her vision to travel throughout the world, and that's what she did. Mom believed that seeing different places, meeting people from other cultures, and developing a palate for various types of cuisines was just as important as whatever one could learn in a classroom. But unlike many who would travel to exotic places and leave their children at home while exploring interesting places, Mom and Dad made sure that Marie, granddaughter Erica, and I were offered opportunities to take cruises and travel multiple times to places in the Caribbean, Mexico, Africa, and a number of places throughout the United States.
I was her personal travel agent. Not only did I make a lot of commission off of the Brown family, Lillian Brown and her family, but I truly enjoyed sharing her tales of her travel experiences. At that time, I was publishing a monthly newsletter, a travel newsletter. So whenever she and her family or friends would go somewhere and come back, they'd have to give me every detail, give me pictures, any music, whatever they picked up along the way, they had to share with me so that I could publish it in my newsletter. And needless to say, many of my clients who never met Lillian and her people, they enjoyed reading about her travel destinations. I would truly miss her.
And Ma Brown would always say, she said, I want to go to South Africa. Time is passing, so she had a thing she would always say, I'm almost getting afraid to buy green bananas because I just don't know how much time it is. So I had the opportunity in '98 to go to South Africa, and the first person I called was Ma Brown. I said, Ma Brown, you really want to go to South Africa? She said, yes. We had 6 weeks to get ready, and we had the most phenomenal time. We went to Cape Town, we went to Robben Island, Johannesburg. And I have a picture where we were watching the different scenery and we saw Mandela's house. And you had to go up an incline. And so I said to myself, I said, my Brown, how are we going to get up this incline? I said, I haven't figured out what I want you to do. You go first. And I got behind her and her South African hips, and I just hoisted them, and we went right up and were able to look down over into Soweto. And it was just phenomenal. We had just the most wonderful time. I learned so much from her. And we traveled after that. We've been to Aruba, we've been to the Bahamas, we've been to Florida, and I met Dr. Lennon on the first trip. We went to Palm Springs, had a wonderful Christmas. We went to Galveston, Texas, and wherever we went, I was always in awe because I learned so much from her. She was more than my mom, she was my teacher.
Both Mom and Daddy made sure that we had a strong spiritual foundation, that we were well versed in African and African American history and culture, and that we embraced our brothers and sisters throughout the Caribbean and the Hispanic world. For years, our parents were active with the Al-Kibulan study group, where they studied ancient African history and traveled to Egypt several times. But Mom took her commitment one step further by joining in COBRA, the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America.
She was probably one of the most dynamic members. She was a lifetime member of COBRA, and very few people reach that status where they're lifetime members, where they get that privilege. One of the things I respected about Ms. Brown was she would always challenge anyone on what needs to be done about our freedom and what we need to do about gaining reparations. She was very intelligent. She raised intelligent children. Her daughters are absolutely wonderful. She was very good friends with my mother, and they had the opportunity to go to one of her favorite places, which was Mexico. She offered to take my mom down to Mexico, and it's probably the only time my mother would probably have gone down there, and the only person she would trust to go down there with, besides family members, would be Miss Brown. She said she had the most intriguing and greatest time ever. She had never been to a country where she had seen the people just gravitate toward them.
Our mom was an international mom. She had African sons and daughters from various parts of Africa. Her first adopted son was Jean K. Bianduti, who came to the United States from the Congo in the 1960s as an exchange student. Of course, Jean K., his wife Tammy, and their children, Jean K. Renee and Helen, became a part of our family, and the beginning of our extended family was born. Mom's love for all of her African children continued throughout the years.
Mom Brown was a very special person to us. I even named my daughter after her. My first encounter with Mom Brown was at Wayne County Community College, where she was my math teacher. She asked me one day what country was I from, and I told her I'm from Liberia, West Africa. And she said she once had an uncle that lived in Liberia. It was from that point we became very close.
A special time in our relationship with Mom Brown was when my mother-in-law came from Liberia to live with us. Mom Brown came from Detroit to visit my mother-in-law. We had a wonderful time. Mother Brown will always be loved by us.
Mom Brown would truly be missed.
One very important person in Mom's life who has not told her story about Mom is Erica. Erica is the only grandchild, and she and Mom were very close. Before Daddy passed in 1996, Erica made a promise that she would continue to look out for her grandmother, and that's what she did. Erica spent so much time with Mom that Mom actually began calling her her third daughter.
My grandmother was a very special woman. Thanks to her, I had my passport and was traveling internationally by the time I was 5 years old. She bought my first computer by the time I was 7 and saw to it that I had whatever educational tools I needed. Grandma has always believed in me. She was one of my biggest cheerleaders and taught me that I should pursue my dreams. Her influence on my life has been greater than anyone will ever know. I have been blessed to have such a wonderful grandmother. As I continue to develop as a strong woman, I will carry forward her memory by being the best person I can be.
I just want to say, on behalf of the Lewis family, that Aunt Ruth was truly an inspiration to all of us. Her knowledge of books and social issues, especially Black history, was educational and motivational to all of us. We will always remember her sense of humor and laughter and sense of family. She will be missed. Love, Sissy. Mom was one of a kind. She accomplished so much and touched so many. And although life won't be the same without her, we've all been blessed by having her in our lives. We love you, Mom.